Most of us like to believe we are rational. We imagine that our decisions come from careful thinking, evidence, and good judgment. Daniel Kahneman's thinking, fast and slow, shows something more uncomfortable. Much of our thinking is automatic, emotional, biased, and invisible to us. Kahneman was a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist whose work helped create behavioral economics. This book became a major New York Times bestseller, sold more than 1 million copies by 2012, and has remained one of the most influential books on psychology, economics, and decision-making. The central idea is that the mind has two modes of thinking. System 1 is fast. It is automatic, intuitive, effortless, emotional, and always working. It recognizes faces, reads simple expressions, completes familiar phrases, and jumps to quick conclusions. System 2 is slow. It is deliberate, analytical, effortful, and more controlled. It solves hard problems, checks logic, compares options, and focuses attention. The problem is not that System 1 is bad. In fact, System 1 is essential. It helps us move through the world quickly. Without it, everyday life would be exhausting. The problem is that System 1 is confident even when it is wrong, and System 2 is often too lazy to check. The first major lesson is that intuition is powerful but unreliable. Sometimes intuition works beautifully. Experts can recognize patterns quickly because they have years of feedback in stable environments. But in many areas, especially money, predictions, hiring, investing, politics, and risk, our intuition can produce convincing mistakes. We often answer an easier question instead of the hard one. If asked whether a company is a good investment, we may answer whether we like its products. If asked whether a person is competent, we may answer whether they are confident. System 1 substitutes what feels available for what is actually relevant. Kahneman uses these systems as characters, not literal places in the brain. The point is to make our inner life easier to discuss. System 1 is the part that instantly reads a facial expression, senses danger, or completes the phrase bread and butter. System 2 is the part that multiplies two difficult numbers, fills out a tax form, or compares the long-term consequences of two choices. The trouble is that System 1 is always offering answers. It creates impressions before we know we are thinking. System 2 can review those impressions, but review takes effort. Because effort feels costly, we often accept the first answer that feels coherent. This is why smart people still make predictable mistakes. Intelligence does not erase bias. In some cases, intelligence only gives us better tools for defending the answer we already liked. Better judgment begins with noticing when the situation is one where intuition deserves suspicion. The second lesson is that our minds are vulnerable to cognitive biases. One famous bias is anchoring. When we hear a number, even an irrelevant one, it can influence later judgments. A high starting price makes a discount feel better. A random estimate can pull our thinking toward it. We like to believe we judge independently, but anchors quietly shape what feels reasonable. Another bias is availability. We judge probability by how easily examples come to mind. If we recently saw news about a plane crash, flying may feel more dangerous, even if the statistics have not changed. Vivid stories often overpower quiet data. Kahneman also explains overconfidence. People are often more certain than the evidence justifies. We create clean stories from messy facts, then mistake the story for truth. This is especially dangerous because confidence is persuasive. We often trust people who sound certain, even when certainty is not accuracy. A related idea is the illusion of understanding. After something happens, it often seems obvious. We look backward and create a story that makes the outcome feel inevitable. But before the event, the future was much less clear. Hindsight makes the world look more predictable than it really is. The third lesson is about loss aversion. Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed that losses hurt more than equivalent gains feel good. Losing $100 usually feels more painful than gaining $100 feels pleasurable. This helps explain why people avoid risks, cling to bad investments, resist change, and overreact to possible losses. Loss aversion is part of prospect theory, one of Kahneman's most important contributions. It shows that people do not evaluate outcomes in perfectly rational terms. We evaluate gains and losses relative to reference points, and our emotions distort the calculation. This matters in business, relationships, negotiation, and personal life. If you understand loss aversion, you understand why people resist giving something up, even when change would help them. Kahneman also explains cognitive ease. When something feels familiar, clear, repeated, or easy to process, we are more likely to believe it. A statement printed in a clean font can feel more true than the same statement in a difficult font. Repeated claims can gain credibility simply because we have heard them before. This matters in media, marketing, politics, and personal judgment. The feeling of truth is not always the same as truth. System 1 often confuses ease with accuracy. Another pattern is the halo effect. If we like one quality in a person or company, we tend to assume other good qualities. A confident speaker seems smarter. An attractive product seems better designed. A successful company seems wise even when luck played a role. Kahneman wants us to be careful with stories. The mind loves coherent narratives. But reality is messy. Outcomes often combine skill, chance, timing, and hidden variables. When a story is too neat, it may be more satisfying than accurate. This is one of the book's deepest lessons. We do not only make errors because we lack information. We make errors because our minds turn limited information into convincing stories. Base rates are one of the best antidotes to bad intuition. A base rate is the general statistical background before you look at the specific case. If you want to judge whether a startup will succeed, first ask how often startups succeed in general. If you want to predict whether a project will finish on time, first ask how often similar projects finish on time. System 1 prefers the inside view. It focuses on the story in front of us. Our team, our plan, our talent, our special circumstances. The outside view asks what usually happens in cases like this. The outside view is less exciting, but often more accurate. This is especially useful because people are prone to planning fallacy. We underestimate how long things will take, how much they will cost, and how many problems will appear. Not because we are stupid, but because we imagine the plan working smoothly. A practical habit is to ask, what happened the last 10 times someone tried something similar? That question can puncture overconfidence quickly. Loss aversion also explains why change is so difficult. People often evaluate change by what they might lose first, not by what they might gain. A new job may offer opportunity, but the possible loss of comfort feels immediate. A business pivot may be rational, but giving up the old plan feels painful. This connects to the endowment effect. Once we own something, we tend to value it more. A possession, idea, role, or plan can feel more valuable simply because it is ours. That makes negotiation and adaptation harder. Kahneman's work shows that humans are not simple expected value calculators. We are emotional evaluators. We feel losses and gains from a reference point. Move the reference point, and the decision can feel completely different. Understanding this does not make emotion disappear, but it helps us ask better questions. Am I rejecting this option because the evidence is poor, or because the loss feels vivid? Am I keeping this because it is valuable, or because I already own it? The fourth lesson is that framing changes decisions. The same facts can lead to different choices depending on how they are presented. A surgery described as having a 90% survival rate feels different from one described as having a 10% mortality rate. The numbers are equivalent, but the frame changes the emotional reaction. This means good decision-making is not only about having information. It is about noticing how information is packaged. What is being emphasized? What is being hidden? What comparison is being invited? The book also introduces the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives through each moment. The remembering self tells the story afterward. Surprisingly, the remembering self often dominates future choices. We do not remember experiences as a perfect average. We remember peaks, endings, and stories. A vacation with many good moments, but a bad ending may be remembered poorly. A painful event that ends with relief may be remembered better than the total pain suggests. This is also why environments matter. If you make decisions while tired, rushed, angry, or socially pressured, System 1 gains more control. If you create space, write down assumptions, compare alternatives, and invite disagreement, System 2 has a better chance to do its job. Better thinking is often less about heroic intelligence and more about better decision design. The remembering self is especially important for happiness. It is possible for the experiencing self to have many pleasant moments, while the remembering self tells a disappointing story afterward. It is also possible for a difficult experience to be remembered positively if it ends well and carries meaning. This creates a strange tension. We live moment by moment, but we make many future choices based on memory. The self that chooses the next vacation, job, restaurant, or project is often the remembering self, not the experiencing self. Kahneman does not fully resolve this tension, but he makes it visible. A good life may require caring for both selves, improving the quality of lived moments and shaping memories that reflect what truly mattered. So what should we do with all this? Kahneman does not suggest that we can eliminate bias completely. The mind cannot simply opt out of System 1, but we can design better conditions for judgment. Slow down for important decisions. Look for base rates. Ask what evidence would change your mind. Be careful with vivid stories. Separate confidence from accuracy. Reframe the same problem in multiple ways. And when possible, use checklists, outside views, and structured processes instead of relying only on intuition. The practical takeaway is humility. Your mind is brilliant, but it is not transparent to itself. You can be intelligent and still biased. You can be experienced and still overconfident. You can be sincere and still wrong. Thinking fast and slow is valuable because it gives us a vocabulary for our mental mistakes. Once you can name a bias, you have a better chance of catching it. The core message is not that humans are foolish. It is that human judgment needs help. The better we understand the mind, the better we can protect ourselves from its shortcuts. If you enjoyed this summary, subscribe to One Book in 10 Minutes. We turn best-selling books with powerful, practical ideas into clear daily lessons you can use in real life. One book, 10 minutes. Better you.